Lisa, why don't you just start us off telling us, as an artistic director, you have been faced with quite a year. What are some of the ways you have been facing the challenges? There's an open-ended question for you.
Yeah, well, I like open-ended questions. They allow me to go on my little Lisa tangents, so I appreciate them. I just want to be really honest and transparent about all of it. So I know that you wouldn't be in this circle right now if you didn't care about City Lights Theater Company. You wouldn't have tuned in. So I feel like it's really important to be really honest and transparent with you. And it's in my nature anyway. So that's sort of how I roll. But I want to give you a little context first. This is, of course, unlike any arts leader has ever experienced. I mean, of course, and it spans through the whole world. So it's not just arts, but I do believe that the arts are being hit particularly hard. I can give you examples of that, but you can imagine if you gather people together for a living, that this virus and what we need to do to stay safe could not be more detrimental. And because we are not serving basic needs of food, shelter, clothing, we're not actually thought about as being essential to our community and our lives. So that poses a very difficult situation, because I think we all know, and you all believe this too, I'm sure, or you wouldn't be on the call, that the arts in general are an integral part of our humanity and our connection to each other and ourselves and the world, and a place to discover and learn and heal and laugh and bond and all of those things. So I truly believe that the arts are essential to our lives. It might not be before food, but it definitely essential. And I think that we're faced with a long time of being sort of undervalued. I mean, I don't want to get on too much of an advocacy soapbox, sorry, but I think that the arts have been undervalued in this country forever. And we're at a crossroads now. You know, we're at a place where if folks realize how important the arts are to their lives, then they have to participate in making sure that they're vocal about that, and that the arts are here on the other side of this. And I truly believe that the arts have to be here on the other side of this so that we can articulate everything we've been feeling and reconnect with one another. So that's the big context. And now the City Lights context is that we have not had a show running for realsies since February. And even though it is part of our culture and our mission to not charge a ton for our 100 seats, that still has a very significant impact on our ability to survive as a business. The other little tricky bit is to realize that we actually put out all of the resources and paid all of the expenses for a show that was supposed to open in March and never did. So if we had not gone through all of the rehearsals and paid for the commission and designed all of the beautiful things for that show, we wouldn't have lost as much money. You know, if this had happened in January before we had put all of those resources out there, then financially we would have been in a slightly better position. So a place that gathers people together for a living has not been able to do that for almost 6 months. That is challenge number one. So the clarity of focus, it came into, it was crystal clear Like, we had to get through this. And the most important thing in that moment were the people. So City Lights has focused on the people since the shelter in place began in the middle of March. And what that means is trying to keep the staff together, trying not to lay anybody off, keeping this team that has built, trust and care and are so in tune with the mission of the organization, and trying to keep those people together and not lay anybody off. And then the people that care about us, like, how do we communicate with the other people in our lives, in our circle, in our family? We don't do this for ourselves, we do it for you. That I often say when we open a show that we are so thrilled that the final character, the last piece of the beautiful pie, has arrived, and it's all of you. Really, we don't do this just for ourselves. Otherwise, everybody could just do it in their garage and we'd call it good. So our care and communication and engagement and connection to all of you is also so critical during this challenging time. As the leader of this organization, I will be honest with you and tell you that I put my head in the sand for a few weeks, all right, maybe a couple of months, about content, about how to create art, not in person. So the first 8 weeks or so, I was just like, raise enough money not to lay anybody off. That's all I care about. That's all I care about. I didn't want to recreate the art for these little screens. I didn't want to. It's not the same. Part of why it's so beautiful is because we're together. Part of why we do this and you go see it is because of the exchange of energy in the room. And you cannot get this. I'm going to stop and say thank you for leaving your screens on, because you probably do have an idea of how impossible it is to communicate to a machine without any human anything. And so for the first couple of months, I was like, we'll get through this, just bear down, call the people that care for us the most, keep fundraising, keep our relationships with our funders good. But I didn't worry that much about the content, about the programming, about what we give to you. And then all of a sudden I was like, you better get on this. You better turn your mind and heart around, because this is going to be with us for a while. So if you don't want this company to close, and believe me, that makes me want to cry even just to think about it. I've been with City Lights for 19 years, which is the bulk, the center section of my career, if you think about my age. And it was the last thing I wanted. I realized that I needed to get it together and think about how we can still serve you in this weird, temporary, albeit I don't know how long, but temporary world. How do we serve you? Because that's why we're here, to serve you through this art form. So after the first couple of months of kind of pouting and being angry, I finally started to realize, okay, what are we gonna do? And honestly, programmatically, I do what I do every day, which is try to put myself in other people's shoes. And I started to think, what would I be interested in seeing, participating in, engaging with online from an arts organization? What sounds cool and what doesn't? What feels sad and what feels kind of neat? Some things feel sad to me, because it's just this huge reminder that we're supposed to be in the same room together, sharing the same air, and experiencing the same thing. So when thinking about programming, that was my next focus, is how do we find a way to engage with all of you that will still stay true to who we are, at City Lights, which is to challenge, inspire, engage. That doesn't make you sad. That doesn't make you like, you know? So I feel like that's what we're doing now. And I feel very proud of this team. I feel proud of our community, meaning all of you, that we've been able to raise enough money to not lay anybody off. We have kept the entire staff, which, just so you know, is like, it's like 11 or 12 people, but it's really only 8 FTEs. But I'm very proud of that. I'm very proud of the people that have stepped up and donated money, because we went from a 60% contributed income run organization, a public benefit corporation, whose business model was intended to be 60% contributed income and 40% earned income, to 100% contributed overnight. From a business standpoint, that is a nightmare. You have nothing set up to change the way that the business is run to survive that. So I was trying to think of art and business, money at the same time, and in the middle of that, caring for the staff, like making sure everybody was okay, and making sure that I had my shit together to be able to make sure everybody else was okay, and that they knew that we could get through this, and they were feeling inspired and ready to roll. And I'm so glad I did that, because the staff has had to learn skills, brand new skills, so fast without like formal training, and just have to, you know, re-envision and pivot and shift like on a dime. And I think that they did that because we are who we are, because we've worked for years to establish that community within that staff, to trust each other and to be brave and to make mistakes and know it's okay to ask for help. We created an environment that actually made it possible to all of a sudden be running what feels like a totally different business on a dime. So now I'm feeling a little bit more enlightened about the programming. And that's why, you know, 6 months later, I'm like, where are all our subscribers? Because we're doing some cool stuff. And I know we're not in the theater, but we're still creating content and still having all of these, you know, very creative meetings. Like I honestly feel like I'm working harder now than I ever have in my life. Like, I don't leave the house, and I feel like I am working harder now than ever. I mean, let's just add the human part, that I have 2 kids going to school in the next room, you know, and that, gosh, I didn't cook 3 meals a day before. And, you know, now everybody's like, I'm hungry, you know. So we add that stress, but also just learning all of this technology. The reason why we started late was because of me. And learning technology to put programming out there in a new way. We did not have these skills. So it's a miracle. Anything you see out there, you can be like, wow, this is not as much fun as going to the theater, but it is a miracle, because none of us went to school for that. And the other thing that's so beautiful is that the staff, and I mean all of the staff, are the ones saying, I'll learn that. I can help with that. I don't know how to do that yet, but I can. I will help with that. Like, everybody, even though we have not been in the same room together for 6 months, everybody is pulling together in every way, every day. And it makes me realize that there's no way this company can close. Like, it is too precious. It is not only too precious to San Jose, and to all of us that work there, but it is too precious for this world. And it shows in crisis. It shows up in crisis. So we are determined to be safe, to make sure that everybody's safe, not just the audiences, but the artists. Like, let's think about that too. That is really a critical piece of this, that, like, yeah, we could pull some actors together in our beautifully renovated empty theater and record something cool from scratch. But is that the right thing to do for the artists? And my whole thing is, if you can't go inside to have a haircut, we should not be asking actors to be in the same room. If we are on the watch list, then absolutely not. So we're trying to hold ourselves to a level of responsibility and integrity that that we've always done. We've always done that. We've always like followed the rules of organizations that are, you know, more professional with more equity actors. We have constantly tried to lift up, and we're doing that now too. So we will have a season. But I will say that planning a season, and especially budgeting for that season, is like being on quicksand. You make one decision, and then 2 seconds later, you're like, whoop, well, that's not going to work. Or we better plan 5 different budgets, 5 different seasons. And trying to stay healthy through that process is also a challenge. It is really difficult. And then I'll shut up in 1 second, Becky, I promise. But the other big picture, the other big picture thing that I want to mention is that the shows that we had planned for this season, the 2021 season, we were so excited about. Like we fought so hard for some of those shows. 4 out of 6 playwrights were from the BIPOC community, which was intentional, and we were so excited about that. But one has to look at those plays and ask oneself, can you do that online? Is it going to be the same? And the answer is no, it's not. So we did something different from quite a few of our colleagues. Instead of just taking what we were going to do anyway and finding a way to shove it onto your MacBook Pro, we said we want to wait until we can do those plays the justice that they deserve. They want to be in a theater. They want a big look. They want video. They want the energy of people around you. Those plays want that. They want sound in a theater, not on your computer, no matter how good it is. So we chose to postpone those plays, which left this big gap. We're like, now what are we going to do? And I think it would have been easier in some ways to say, okay, everybody, let's just do the season we planned and figure out how to do it through Zoom. But that would not be the right decision. It would shortchange those shows. They would not be as good. The experience that we wanted you to have by picking those shows, you would not be able to have. So we are going to do those shows. We're just going to do them when we can be back in the theater. And we're also, I don't care what time of year it is. I don't care what season it is. As soon as we're allowed to be back in, we'll just pick those shows back up and put them back in. It doesn't matter anymore, like we always do the classic in the spring and the musical in the summer. Like, I don't care about any of that anymore. If there are stories that we want to tell, as soon as we're allowed to tell them, we will tell them. And we do understand that when we are back, we probably will not be able to have full houses. Fine. And there will be many of you that will not feel comfortable at the same time. And that is fine. Again, we are here to serve you. So when we are allowed to come back, we will still invest in recording or streaming and execute that well so that the folks that aren't as comfortable coming back as soon will still have what we have to offer. We can still give you something. Even though it might not be the best, if there's an overlap of a few months where people just need a little more time to get more comfortable. So our intention is to come back when we can, when it is 100% safe for the artist and the audience, and then also make sure that we've given another vehicle so that if you don't feel comfortable, you're not going to be missing out. We're not going to like kick you to the curb. You don't feel comfortable? All right, well, too bad. We're not going to do that. We're going to make sure that everybody that we serve has some kind of access without barriers to what we have to offer. And then that leads us to, well, what do you do in the meantime? Which, well, how was that for a segue, Becky? What do we do in the meantime?
I think that's a great segue. Yeah, because one of the things that I wanted to talk about tonight is some of the things that we are going to do in the coming season. One of the shows that you mentioned, which was supposed to start off our season, just next week, Waiting for Next, a world premiere by Jeffrey Lowe about two friends over their lifetime. That still will be the first show we can do when we're back in the theater. It's a 2-person show, and we did think about, can we just go ahead and just have it online? But I think, like you said, would that do it justice? Don't we also want to have it in the theater and stream it? It's
And
really
why
cool.
else, Becky? Why else do we think that we don't want to just put it online?
Sorry, what'd you say?
What's the other reason why we don't want to take Jeffrey's play and have it online only?
Well, then were you
Ron
going
knows.
Oh, go ahead, Ron. I didn't expect to be asked a question. I'm the one who asked the questions. Go ahead, Ron.
Because it was a world premiere,
Yes.
and we weren't quite sure that the playwright, that we would be doing the playwright justice in presenting his work only online. It was written for the stage, and we thought that it should be presented on the stage in the way that he envisioned it. Then after that, if it goes online or whatever, great, but it should be premiered on stage.
Yeah.
Answer D.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
It's still definitely our coming out party. That will be the first show. Like, we are committed to that. And Jeffrey and I talk all the time. And we're like, it's time. No, it's not time. All right, are the guys still hanging on? Because it's already been cast. So the guys still hanging on? The guys are hanging on. As soon as we can, we will do it. But there need to be some hearts beating in the room.
Yeah. Well, tell us about the other projects. You've got a couple of things lined up for the fall. I know one is specifically for online, and one could be both.
Yes. Well, first of all, there's this next stage beeswax.
Oh, yeah. I keep forgetting about that.
Oh, yeah. So this was not my thing. This was Becky's thing. And it is so fun. I show up every Friday. I think I've only missed one. Okay, 2. There was a power outage. But they're so fun, and they feel like, a little behind the scenes, and also lifting up local artists and giving them a platform. And some of the singers specifically I'm thinking about, that don't work for City Lights, but we give them the marketing and a place to do their thing. So I think the next stage will continue. We might change the yeah, Becky, you're amazing. Agreed. We may change what night of the week it is or something like that, but I love this program, and this came out of this crazy time. So we also have to be grateful for the blessings that were discovered during this time too.
I also have to point out that before April, I had never even been on Zoom. So I'm the marketing director. That's my day job. And here I am running an online series. But boy, it's been so much fun. And
she's like running it, like producing it and running
it. It's crazy, isn't it?
Booking it.
People, but there's some people here who have never even been to City Lights in the flesh and have discovered us through our digital programs. And that just feels amazing. We can't wait to welcome them back, or welcome them for the first time into our space.
So I love that program. So this program that we're all on right now, that we're sharing space together right now. And I love it. And I'm excited that it came out of this crazy time. And as far as we have the capacity, I hope that it continues in some fashion, even when we are able to be back into the theater. Because if you only have 100 seats, and then you really do discover there's another way to reach more people, or people that don't, maybe have small children and can't get to the theater very often, or whatever the case may be. It's really nice that we have found this way to communicate and engage with folks. So the next stage is definitely one. I had an idea that I'm very excited about, and have no idea what it's going to take to execute well, and what are all the pieces that I'm missing, and what do we need, and do we have those skills on staff? But this project is an answer to COVID-19, shelter in place, nobody's in the theater, the undeniable time that we absolutely need to 100% face the fact that our world is not equitable. So, an answer to the civil rights movement at hand, all of us need to realize that it actually isn't fair, and it isn't anywhere. So we at City Lights, even though we've been in this journey for a number of years of wanting to better reflect our community and be more welcoming and inclusive in our work, it's time to like step up that game, right? Put the pedal to the metal and actually put some action to the words. So if the heart has the solidarity for BIPOC artists in the community and the lack of resources or opportunities that they have felt, it is time to change that. If it's one of the reasons why we gave 10% of our profits from our fundraiser to the Black Theater Fund. It's just time to, like, if you mean it, do it. Like, if you feel it, then show it. So this project addresses the issue of us all being at home trying to enjoy art and wanting to give more opportunities to Black, Indigenous, people of color that are artists in our area. And okay, so so I have a little trouble watching theater on the computer personally, unless you're Broadway HD and you have 10 cameras all zooming around and you're Hamilton on Disney Plus. I'm always like, I don't feel connected. So I saw this this solo piece, it was like a long monologue, shorter than a one act, but longer than a monologue, one person speaking directly into the lens. So the entire 34 minutes, he acted straight into the lens. And it was the first time that I felt like I was actually taking in art in an engaging way. I felt like he was talking to me. And the story had a beginning, a middle, and an end. So it didn't feel like you were missing something. It wasn't like a monologue where it's out of a larger piece. It was written to be 34 minutes, acted by one person, not sitting. So there was a tripod and he was standing and acting with his body, but always coming back to me. And I was like, oh, well, that's cool. Like, that feels a little different. That actually doesn't make me sad. I'm actually like, ooh, what's next? So that's the format. And what we're doing is we are commissioning solo pieces by specifically BIPOC playwrights to write those. And then we'll get actors, and then we will get a director, and they will drop off sanitized tripods and equipment on their front step. And well, Ron will do that. I won't do that. And we will, I'm not sure. Like, will we hire a costume designer? Maybe. Will we have Ron make sure that wherever they're filming fits the story? Maybe. Or design a Zoom backdrop? Maybe. Like, as close to creating theater as possible is what we're going to try, but we've never done it before. So right now, what I'm doing is identifying the playwrights and trying to get them behind the vision, like get them to understand, like, the point is this. The other thing is I will have zero artistic control over the subject matter. I've been very, very clear about that. That part of breaking down some of these systemic issues are that I'm the one with the power, and I have to let go of some of that power, right? So what I've said to the two playwrights that we have hired so far is, it's your voice. If you have something to say, we want to support that. I am not going to tell you what to write about or what it needs to be about, or no subject, don't do that, it'll upset our season pass holders. It is an opportunity for them to get paid to write something that comes from them that we will then produce. My hope is that we can do like 3 to 6 of these. And then my super hope is that when we're all able to gather again, that we can bring everybody back, including the playwrights, for like a weekend to see them live. So people will have already seen them online, but then, ooh, we're all gonna gather the second weekend in August, and you get to see all of those 5 or 6 solo pieces again. So yeah, it's in the beginning of, I mean, you know, I'm early yet, but I have 2 awesome playwrights already. I guess I can say it. So Jeffrey Lowe is going to be one of them. He's my easy one because I know him, right? And I asked him to help me with this because I have a personal relationship with him, and he's the playwright of Waiting for Next. He's slotted to direct Viet Gone when we do that play, which we will. And so I felt like I needed a starter kit of somebody that I already knew and trusted. The new one that we have, her name is Lisa Marie Rollins. I have never met her. I've only talked to her on the phone, and she seems awesome. And she's super excited. She's like, I've never had an artistic director, you know, give me this much freedom and respect for what I would like to say. And I'm like, yeah, that's the whole point. And we're going to pay you. So I'd like to get at least 2 more. I do tend to, my staff will probably nod, but I do tend to go too far, too fast. I'm like, yeah, we can do it. We can do anything. And so I'm like, we're going to do 12, you know, and then all of a sudden everybody's like, whoa, you know, they have to be rehearsed. They have to be directed. They have to be designed. They have to be recorded. They have to be edited. We have to market them. We need to, you know, so sometimes they have to be paid for. Exactly. Thank you, man. So sometimes I know that I can get ahead of myself because I get so passionate about the work. So I'm not committing to how many, but I am committing to, you know, some this year, new work by BIPOC playwrights intended for the little green dot. And I think they'll be super cool. So that's one idea. I also have a bunch of little smaller ideas that I won't go into too much because I know that we're running out of time, but I have an idea to bring music downtown that is paid for. So it's not like busking, but paying fairly musicians and getting permission to have them hang out where the alfresco dining is already happening. So totally safe, but getting a little bit of art in the downtown area. I also have an idea about Kirsten Brandt, who wrote Coded. She wants to write a little 10-minute Zoom musical about getting married during shelter in place on Zoom. And it'll be like 10 minutes, but we're working on that together. And then of course, the hardest part is looking for a real normal full-length play that will be good in this way. And so to me, that means not a lot of scenes. It means more monologues. It means not so long because it's so hard to sit and watch for so long. So that's been the hardest part for me. I thought it would be easier to find alternative programming, and it's been really difficult. But we have like 3 that we're considering right now. And I'm sure they'll end up being awesome, but that is something that we are still working on. And then something I'm super excited about is Filament, because we were talking about how like everyone's sick of looking at the screen and the weather started getting nice. And I remember saying like people want to take a walk or be outside or enjoy some art with a picnic, and Filament was created. So with that, I'll give it back to you, Becky.
That was a good segue. Thank you, Lisa. There's so much to be excited about, even in the midst of all this turmoil. The other thing I wanted to mention briefly is that for those of you who don't know, Ron and his team have done an extensive renovation in the theater. I'm not going to say too much about that because we will have a next stage program about that later on this fall. But I'll just say murals and bright and hate and airy. Kim's face is going wild. It looks fantastic in the theater. And so that's one of the ways that we've been using our time while the theater's been closed. So just a little tease. Thank you so much, Lisa. Okay, so for Filament is our new podcast channel. I have a little slideshow that I made that just gives a little teaser But how it started, just very briefly, is that we every year have the Lights Up Festival of New Plays. And of course, this year we could not. So we thought, hey, what about a podcast? So I'm going to share my screen so you can see a little slideshow I made about filament. So there's a little taste of it. And I see Evelyn, who is here talking in the chat. She's one of our actors who popped up there. So one of the things we've been talking about, the common theme is all of us playing different roles during this lovely pandemic year. And one of the most notable people is Ron, who not only spearheaded the whole renovation of the theater, but has jumped in with both feet to the podcast world. So let's start out. As I said before, I've got Ron and I've got Yvette and I've got Carol, who are all part of Filament. Ron, and I think Yvette, you were really active in the beginning of it too. Why don't you guys start out telling us a little bit more about how Filament came to be and how Ron dove in with both feet?
I couldn't even remember how we came up with the idea at our last meeting. I said, whose idea was this anyway? And Yvette sheepishly raised her hand and said, it was mine. I said, I think it's a great idea. It is so different than anything I've ever done before in the entertainment world ever. When we started talking about the idea of a podcast for the new plays, I thought it was a great idea because, like that little slideshow said, it was all about the words, and we were constantly getting, not to put detriment to any of the other Lights Up festivals, but we were constantly getting bogged down in the blocking and what furniture and props, and we said, we really need to focus on the words. And then all this happened, and then all we could do was focus on the words. So it was sort of a blessing for the new play festival. And so when we started talking about this, and we said, all right, well, if we could do a podcast, none of us knew anything about creating a podcast. I mean, I knew how to listen to them. You put the earphones in, you push the button, and people start talking to you. But I didn't know what went into making that happen. And so I basically had to go to, Podcast 101 and learn how to do it. And that's exactly what I did. I learned that I needed a place to host the podcast, and then I needed a place to distribute the podcast. And then we had the added situation of not everybody could be in the same room. And we had 10 actors and a director. So now we had to make sure that George, the sound designer, could get all these different people reading all their different parts of the play at once. So I had to find a way to get 10 different people recorded at the same time to George, and we did. I found a program that did that, and it had for a trial period right now free because of COVID. So I said, yep, we're using that one. And we think it's a beta program. We don't think it's fully established yet, but it's worked. Our podcast right now has passed 375 downloads, which I think is amazing. We've put out four different episodes so far. And Yvette and I, without talking about it, we created this team between us. And Carol, not leaving you out of this on purpose, but
no.
But I joined in way later. Don't worry about it.
But between Yvette and I, without even talking about it, we just automatically knew who was going to take care of what portions of it. And where I had my own challenges with, oh, that's not going to work. Oh, we need microphones. Oh, this person needs an Ethernet cable. Oh, we need a podcast host. Oh, we need a way to distribute it. Yvette had her own set of challenges. Why don't you talk about those, Yvette?
Well, I am a lover of podcasts. I listen to so many podcasts. I can't even tell you how many I have on my phone right now. And I never thought I would be writing copy for a podcast, which is kind of a really cool thing. Ron helped with the very first one. He was like, okay, well, we were like, okay, we need an intro and we need a host. Okay, so for this one, for Lights Up specifically, we were like, well, Rachel Bacher usually runs that, so we really want her to be a part of it. It's her project that she spearheads every year, and she should be the host for that specific program. So then it was like, okay, well, Lisa's gonna be like the intro voice, and then, well, like, I guess I gotta write stuff for Lisa to say, but Lisa just, says wonderful things on her own. So we were suddenly like, okay, let's come up with this. And Ron created the first pass of it. And I've always considered myself much more of an editor.
Which seemed, the thing that I wrote was, when situations like this present itself, I'm very logical, and I wrote a very logical thing, and I sent it to Yvette. I said, here's our first copy, do with it what you will. She took that and she added such depth and warmth and humanness. I read it and I said, oh my God, you are so much better at this than me. You need to do this from now on.
So that's become my portion of it. And then there was also, when we were going to do Lights Up in person, we thought, well, part of changing up the program was going to be focusing, like we said, just on the words. Don't worry about who's standing when, who's entering when. The point is for... oh yeah, maybe I caught the writing bug from Keen. I've always enjoyed writing, but but anyway, so we thought about it needs to be focused on the words. We can't be bogged down by anything else, because the point is for the playwrights to hear their plays and get feedback so that they can revise it, and then eventually, hopefully, it's actually gets a full production. So then suddenly we weren't doing it in front of anybody. But originally we said, okay, part of trimming everything down, we're going to have a set of actors that are going to be in all of the shows, since they're just going to be reading from, a book in front of everybody. Then COVID hit and everyone was in their homes, and we thought, well, it's really sad that we don't get to do this. But then we thought, well, why can't we? That's always kind of been the City Lights thing. Like, well, who says we can't? So we were just like, all right, let's try it. And we were still with the idea of 10 people. And we had already had some directors lined up for it. And we'd already had conversations about like, okay, we want very specific things for these, for all of these roles. Then we had to actually figure out that puzzle piece of, okay, how do we set up a group of 10 actors that are going to be in like 8 different shows, but you have to like piece them all in different places. And then we had to, it was quite a journey to get to that place. And one of the most important parts of that for the directors and for me was to make sure that there was a lot of representation of the BIPOC community. And as we've been saying it, I know it was said in the chat, but for anyone who doesn't know, BIPOC means Black, Indigenous, and people of color. It was at the top of our list that we needed to have more than 50% of the cast be BIPOC folks. And turns out we had 2 white people out of like a set of 10 people, which I think is pretty cool as part of the BIPOC community. But then, yeah, how do you put them in each role? So there was that whole aspect of it. Then we had to figure out, how do you get people to meet up? Like, do we have rehearsals over Zoom, over Google Hangouts? Does everyone have to have their camera on? Like, does it matter after the first rehearsal because you're going to be listening to each other? It's been a wild ride, folks.
And we tried all of those things. We tried using Zoom for the rehearsal and the recording. We said, oh no, that doesn't work at all because now everybody's not paying attention to the script. So we ditched the Zoom and we just used the program that was used to record the podcast. So, and the spreadsheets I imagine Yvette had to make to figure out how and where everybody was in the program, I can't imagine. And all her colored pens, I bet you probably used every single color that you owned.
And kudos to our stage manager too,
Yeah.
Mackenzie Blair.
I was gonna say, I think without Mackenzie, we would all kind of be, up a creek.
We brought Mackenzie in because once we saw the puzzle that we had created, we said, well, I'm not going to deal with this. And Beth said, I'm not going to deal with this. Let's hire a stage manager. She'll deal with it. And we said, okay, here you go. And we
who's
ran
going
out
to
of the
send
room.
all the links out? Who's going to know when to be where? Because for the first, especially because no one had done any podcast recording, we had to have like a trial. The very first rehearsal, we had to have all the people from that play join George over in the program we were going to use to record, so he could hear everyone's mic setup. Everyone would know what that was going to look like on recording night. And then once that was taken care of, you had to click out, go back to your Google Hangouts link, and then actually join rehearsal. So I will tell you that the first rehearsal, everyone was in the Google Hangout going, wait, are we supposed to be in another recording thing? What's going on? Is there a separate link? I don't understand what's happening. So it was quite a kerfuffle there. I think I know all of this because I was the narrator for just the stage directions for all of the shows, because again, we quickly realized we didn't have to think of having we didn't think about somebody reading stage directions even when we were going to have people in person, and suddenly we thought, oh, we're paying 10 actors. I don't really want to pay, I don't really want to have to like decrease the amount that each actor is getting because now we have to add on number 11. And so I'm like, well, I work for the company. I'll just read the stage directions. Turns out it was probably a good idea for our first run around, because if something went wrong, I probably had the connection or I knew what was happening. So that helped out a lot.
And you're also an actor, Yvette. You might be, pretty good actor too.
It helps in certain situations. Another thing that I want to point out, it was also very important to me as somebody who was writing all of the copy, the intro and everything. We also have artists who sell like artwork and pottery and glassworks and hats in the building when we have the Lights Up Festival. And I thought, how sad. Usually they're looking forward to having a display, and people who walk through are like, oh, wow, I didn't know I needed a fascinator, but now I'm going to walk away with a nice new hat. And I thought, well, why can't we do ad breaks for them? So then suddenly I was writing an ad break for, Susanna Greenwood's hats. And so that was an interesting new challenge too. But I didn't want to leave those artists out either because, sometimes they sell a lot. And I thought, well, if anyone listens to it and then says, you know what, I'll check out that website, then maybe they'll get a sale out of that. So it's been a fun new adventure.
And Carol did a fantastic job creating the logo for the.
Yeah, Carol made the logo.
And I love it.
The other person I need to credit is George Saras, who, besides being our sound designer, our resident sound designer at City Lights, is also our resident composer. So the music that you heard in the slideshow, George composed the music and also created that cool opening sound at the beginning. Well, before we talk about the Halloween show, I would love if I could talk a little bit more about the Lights Up series, since we have a few more episodes. Each episode drops at 5:29 p.m. every Tuesday. And why is that, Ron?
Because that's the address of the theater company, and there has to be some association with the theater, and that's the association.
529 South 2nd Street.
Becky called me one day and said, when is the thing going to be released? I said, Tuesday. She said, when? I said, I don't know, 5:30. And about a minute later, I called her back and said, no, it's 5:29, because I had looked at our sign and said, oh, okay, I got it. It's 5:29. That's what we're going to do.
Well, tell us what's coming up on the remaining episodes of Lights Up. What are the plays about?
I'm trying to remember. Let's see. I just sent copy to George too.
Well, you've got Dog and Boy.
Dog and Boy, yes. Dog and Boy is coming up. It's a 2-person show. It is heavy. I will say that. It is a very dramatic piece. It has a lot of heart in there, but it is pretty dark. So do listen to those content warnings. But it's really good. It's a really good piece. And then after Dog and Boy, we have a series of shorts. So 3 short plays, each written by a different playwright. And those are the lightest of our fare for Lights Up.
Light fare, lights up. Yes. And of course, you can listen to all the previous shows as well, or all the previous podcasts. So cltc.org/filament, as I could just type that into the chat, couldn't I? There we go.
Yes. And I will say that if you listen to any of the episodes and you have any thoughts, you have any questions, you have any comments, please send them our way. As we said, these shows are intended for the playwrights to get feedback so that they know if they need to make any changes, if something isn't clear, if something is really loved and they need to keep that in there, or they need to further explore an idea. So we urge you all the time when you listen to the podcast to do that. But here's your verbal reminder once again. If you listen to it and you have any thoughts or questions or comments, please send them our way. We would love to do another episode where, we collect all of those questions and comments, we share them with the playwrights. Maybe we'll do something with it, but it's an important part of it.
Oh my goodness. Thanks so much for doing my piece Changeling on Filament. Lauren, I didn't realize that was you because your name is iPhone. This is Lauren Doyle, one of our Lights Up playwrights, and her play Changeling opened up the whole series. That was the first play. So when we get to Q&A, if you want to ask Lauren anything about being a playwright as part of this project, that would be great. Oh, and Anne just sent comments and questions to filament@cltc.org. Right. Well, before we go to our audience Q&A, there's one more thing I wanted to talk about on Filament, which is our Halloween show. And Yvette and Carol are spearheading that. And I'm not sure if they might still be accepting writing submissions. Tell us all about the Halloween series.
I'm going to pass this on to Carol because this was Carol's bright idea.
We were brainstorming things for the podcast, and we were talking about things we typically have in the theater, and someone mentioned we always do a holiday show. And because I'm me, I thought holiday and thought Halloween. So because it's September, which is basically October, which means I can have pumpkin and it's justified. And so I sent an email out to our brainstorming group and said, what if we did scary stories on the podcast? Lights Up will be done. We'll need something to do on the podcast. Scary stories are something that can be heard and be creepy and dark, and it works. What are your thoughts? And Yvette immediately responded saying, yes, I'm in Halloween. How can we make this happen? And we quickly decided that one of the things City Lights does and does best is lift up artists and find people in our community who have talents and showcase their work. So we really wanted all of our Halloween stories to be written by our people in our community. So we put out a call for submissions for anything creepy, horror, ghost, supernatural, scary story. And we're going through those, and then we're going to be reading those on Spooky Lights, which is going to be the name of the Halloween series.
And so you're still accepting submissions?
We are accepting submissions until September 21st.
Oh, terrific. Carol, you want to put the email address in the chat, or is it the same thing? Is it filament@cltc.org?
Filament@cltc.org. And when you submit your piece of work, we ask that you have it in you can submit more than one piece, each piece in its own PDF, and give us your name, how your name is pronounced, your pronouns, your email address, and your phone number, and that's it. And I'm so excited. I love it.
I know, me too. We've been reading all of the pieces so far that we've gotten, and it's really cool. A thing that's been made very clear is that the horror genre is it's wide, it's nuanced, and although we asked for spooky, scary, creepy things, People have also sent in some very heartfelt things that have to do with the supernatural and like encounters and things. And also horror isn't always a ghost or, you know, some other worldly being. Sometimes it's people. So it's become a very wide sort of net that we're pulling in. And I think
Yvette and I had a whole meeting about what should we call what we're asking for.
Yeah.
It's not always a ghost story, but it's a scary story, but it's spooky, but
Nice,
yeah,
Ron.
exactly.
Yeah, I think it's important to remember that net, you know, we're casting wide. Horror is a little bit of everything. And so it'd be cool to get, you know, different submissions from all these different things. We've gotten a couple. Lauren, you sent us quite a few, and they are so fascinating. I love it all. Thank you so much.
We love you, Lauren. You are awesome.
So if you have anything, we also asked for true stories. We've gotten, I think, 2 or 3 of those. So
Those are the creepy ones.
yeah, one of those
I mean,
is
they're all
a
creepy.
heartfelt one. It's still kind of creepy, but it's like, oh, there's heart, but also like, please don't let that happen to
Ooh.
me.
Yep.
Yikes. Oh, this is going to be fun. And who is going to be reading your stories?
The City
I mean,
Lights
who's going to be
staff.
reading them on the podcast?
Yeah, it's going to be members from the City Lights staff. So it could be me, it could be Yvette, it could be Lisa, it could be Anne. We're figuring it out as we go along, but it's going to be
It could
faces
be
and
you.
Oh. I need a spookier background. I've got Amadeus. It's not really spooky.
It looks like you're having a cocktail party at your house
Yeah, with
in the
Salieri.
17th century.
And actually, Yvette is there, just to the side of my head.
And
'cause
just
you're in
holding
it
your
now.
head.
Yeah.
It's the ghost of Yvette. Let's go with that.
Ooh.
To make it spooky.
Creepy.
I've been dead this whole time.
Oh, I can't wait for this program. This is great. And I know that you Filament team are also thinking about interviews and other types of content as we go on. I mean, that's what's so exciting about the next stage in Filament. It's just, we can do anything as long as we're talking about the creative world. Like I started out doing mainly theater and dance on here, and then I brought in Yvette's significant other, Keenan, the wonderful pottery artist, and we're planning to have an author coming up. And I mean, these are hard times, but these possibilities are exciting.
I just love the fact that we're able to still, excuse me, that we're still able to create and not just do plays and put them on the screen. That this is a new way of, it's not even a new way of creating, it's a new way for us to create. And it's not a play that's recorded or a play that's done in an empty theater like the basketball games are now, you know, that where there's no audience or anything. I hated the idea. I hated the idea of doing a show that was going to be broadcast, because that's called television. And you might as well watch Netflix. You know, we all have subscriptions to that. So why would I pay the theater when I could pay Netflix the same amount and we'll get better quality TV? So let's create this way, some way that's different than Netflix or TV or anything, because it's just a good way of creating that is not the same thing that you can get on Netflix.
Yeah.
Well,
I also just want to mention that there's something very freeing about everything falling apart.
Mm-hmm.
Like that it sort of gave us permission to not, I mean, there are no more rules anymore. Like budgets don't mean anything. And, you know, it's, we don't have to follow a season like we normally do. I mean, that is actually something good that has come out of this. And I think that when things do get a little bit more back to what we're used to, they won't be the same, but I think we will carry some of these things with us, because, you know, it falling apart is what allowed for the freedom for these creative ideas. I know some of you have heard this already because you're either on staff or you may have been in Rotary, but I looked up the word apocalypse. I look up words sometimes when I'm like, when I'm afraid of them, or if I don't feel like I'm really understanding their true meaning. And the word apocalypse actually means to uncover or reveal. So the word itself is not about the destruction, but about what rises out of that closing or ending, or, you know, the door shutting. It's actually, the word is unveil. So I try to think about that a lot when we look outside and it looks like the apocalypse every day right now. But like, are there good things that come out of the ashes, like the phoenix, you know? And that's a very, you know, I tend to like those higher picture, higher altitude thoughts. But I do think things like filament and next stage came out of ashes.
Indeed. Indeed. Thank you, Lisa. That's well said. Thank you. Well, we are at 9:00, and why don't we go ahead and open it up to audience Q&A. We'll have some Q&A before we say goodnight for the evening. Excuse me, ash in the air, right? Feel free to either type questions into the chat or just raise your hand. If you're on camera, shout them out. That's fine too. As I said, not only do we have our staff members here, but we also have Lauren Doyle, who's one of our playwrights from Lights Up. So feel free. Anybody got any other questions? Or did I ask all the questions in the world? It's quiet. I'm going to just put in one plug then. One thing that Lisa mentioned really quickly was season passes. And some of you have renewed your season passes for 2021. And we thank you so much. What a show of faith in us and all the things that we're doing. For those of you who haven't, it's worth looking up. We are at cltc.org/season pass. Has information about the pass, and as a pass holder, you get access to everything that we do in the next season, online or on stage. This series, The Next Stage, remains free, as does Filament, but we'll have other things back in the theater. So it's worth looking up and seeing what our other benefits are for our season pass. Thank you so much. Ooh, I just see a question popping up. Do you have specifics on what it will take to be determined safe to resume indoors? Yeah, that's a question for Lisa and Ron, I think.
Well, a lot of that is going to be determined by what the government, what the county guidelines are. A lot of that is going to be determined by what our audiences feel is comfortable. And it's going to be determined by what the actors feel is comfortable. We're going to take all those factors, and using the guidelines for sanitation and keeping the place clean, and distancing and masks and all that stuff that's going to be required. I think we're going to take all of those factors, put them together, and that's going to tell us when to open the theater. Lisa?
Yeah, I would just add that the trickiest bit, because we really feel like we can keep people not close to one another, coming and going at different times. We really believe that we can keep everything super clean and sanitized. The theater is beautiful. What we don't have the capacity for yet is like contact tracing, testing. Like, technically we should be able to have testing protocol in place before we as a business gather people. I mean, honestly, I'm going to tell you the truth, because that's how I roll. The rules are all over the place. Like, you can bring people together for some things. You can go to a gym, but you can't have rehearsals. Like, you can go in restaurants and eat a meal as long as you're X number of feet apart, but you can't be X number of feet apart in a theater. One of the tricky bits right now, and believe me, I'm an advocate and loud about it, is that live theater is considered closed all the way through stage 4. So the rules are not the same, and it's not, I don't think it's being considered in the best way right now. So health, safety, welfare are key to us too. So we're not fighting the rules. It just feels odd that we're not even listed as part of the reentry plan, like anywhere. And so, you know, we're in some circles that Anna and I in particular are in some groups where we're going to voice those concerns and ask our council people and government and the county for some clarity around what they think is fair, but we'll still also ask ourselves, do we feel safe? Do we feel like we're putting anybody in jeopardy in any way?
We do have a whole, I at least have a whole protocol for getting people, audience members in and out of the theater and where they can be and where they can't be and how everything moves. So that's in place and ready to go whenever it's time for it to go.
You also need to
all
have
our PPE stuff is sitting in boxes center stage right now, waiting to be installed.
Yeah, and the other thing that you have to consider is that you have to have a plan in place if, gosh forbid, somebody does get sick. So if somebody does, you have to have a plan in place, which means shutdown. So in some ways, I sort of feel like let's make sure that, you know, you don't want to put out not hundreds, but thousands and thousands of dollars to produce something in the theater to then have the same thing happen that happened to Coded in March. So we have to be smart about it too.
And Debbie, I just read your comment. I'm part of a production managers forum, and exactly that is happening in that forum. There's a document that's created that is being sent to make sure that everybody understands what it means to a theater or what we need to know to open up. So that's happening.
I also will bring up that as a fellow artist,
and hi, Debbie.
I want to say that as a fellow artist, it's also, we've been thinking a lot about, you know, the whole arts community I've seen about how to get patrons in, how to keep them safe, how to keep everyone on staff safe. I feel also that one of the points that is being kind of left to the sidelines is also what is the comfort level of all of the artists, since those are the people that are going to be on the stage with each other night after night in front of different audience groups. And so that's another thing that you need to think about. I've actually requested from TBA, and I reached out to other theater organizations like TCG, Theater Communications Group, to start a survey about that, because I know that there is some data being collected for audience members about what their comfort level is and what they think that that theaters should have in place for them to feel safe. And I've requested that they do something like that for artists as well, because they are the ones that are going to be in the theater each night in front of all of these people. And I think that's also an important piece. We can't just assume that our artists are gonna, you know, rush back into the theaters without also needing their voices heard. So I'm following up with that, actually. I did that today.
That's great. We also have a meeting next week with a group around that's being headed up by SV Creates, and it is about advocacy. And our whole thing is that we want to, of course, do everything safely, but we need more clarity and assistance from the county and the city of what that means to them. So that's what we're going to ask for, is not like pushing to come back, but we want to be connected we want to have a conversation about it and know what they think is safe as well. And some of our colleagues, you know, because you can have a dinner party for X number or below, right? Some of our colleagues have already tried to do some streaming with artists on site and have been shut down. And then other ones have asked for permission and have been denied. So really, we're doing the right thing right now. And we'll change that as soon as it's safe to do so.
Well said. I know one of the things we've talked about too is a smaller audience capacity to keep it safer. And we are already at 100 seats. So smaller than that gets kind of intimate, but maybe that's good. Maybe that's good. There's a question in the chat about when are we going to be on the next stage talking about the theater renovations. And that's a program that Ron and I are putting together. Ron has, well, tell us, Ron.
Well, I went against the rules. I was supposed to be building that movie now, and I said, I don't feel like doing that right now. So I built another movie. And this is another whole set of software that I had no idea how to use. So I was teaching myself how to use it while I was building this movie. So anyway, there is a movie coming out that will be presented on the next stage about the renovation and about what we did and why we did it, and if necessary, how we did it, and pointing out a lot of the safety features that we built in that aren't readily obvious when you just look and you say, oh, that's beautiful. Yeah, but it's beautiful, but this surface is now wipeable, whereas before it was just a wooden platform and not cleanable. So we're going to delve into why we made a lot of the changes that we made. It wasn't just for aesthetic purposes. It wasn't even just for being more efficient work-wise. It was for a more making the building a more safe place for both audience members and the people that work there. So we had to get rid of all surfaces that couldn't be wiped, for instance, that are used. That now all our surfaces are wipeable. But you wouldn't think about that when you look at, oh, this is beautiful. So that's kind of stuff that I want to point out. And we did do a lot of aesthetic stuff. We did very little work in the theater. We did a lot of work around the theater, all the supporting areas of the theater, the bathrooms, the lobby, the green room, the dressing rooms. Oh my God, the green room. That area outside the men's room. You will not recognize the area outside the men's room. Kim, you will not recognize the area outside the men's room.
It's a thing of beauty.
And that's really just aesthetic. That one was aesthetic, but we spent it was 116 days when Coded was ready to open. I think we got one preview in, and then this whole thing shut us down. We said, all right, well, we'll just keep the setup, and when it's over, we'll just continue on with that show. And we said, oh, well, we shut down for 2-3 weeks. How terrible. So after the third week, I called my friend and said, hey, do you want to take the set of Coded down? And from there, I made a list. I made a COVID project list, and we just set into it. And me, Paulino DeLille, and Joseph Hiddy, and sometimes Rodrigo Serna Lopez, we just dug into the building. And we just went to every corner and cleaned and painted and mopped and rebuilt. And it's actually quite amazing what we did in those 116 days. And then we just went home, and I've been home since. And I go down and make sure Paul's okay, because he lives across the street from the theater, and he watches the building for us. But yeah, a movie will be coming out about that, and I think I think you're really gonna like it.
You will. You will. So later this fall, we'll have that. There's one more question in the chat, and I think we're going to wrap up. Paul would like to know, what about outside? I think that means, can we have performances outside? And that's something that has been looked into extensively.
Yes.
Who wants to take that, Ron or Lisa?
The problem with outside is where. We have a parking lot next door to us, but it would take an awful lot to make the place safe. Never mind make it into a performance space, safe from the neighborhood, because it's not the best neighborhood that the theater's located in. And I don't know that it's worth doing the amount of work. Lisa talked about a program that might be done outside. Again, they're in their infancy. It's really just a matter of finding a place that an outside thing can happen. And we assume that you're talking about doing a show outside. If you're talking about, did I clean the outside of the building? Yes, I cleaned the outside of the building too.
That's what I assumed. I assumed the question was about the outside of the building. Does it look nice too? And actually, they are, the property owners are talking about really making some changes in that block, that like big ones. So hopefully that will happen too, because it doesn't feel like a cozy place to do a show, really. It just doesn't. But in addition to the musicians, maybe some dancers outside while the weather is still nice that we're trying to get behind, we're also I'm talking to somebody that knows something about like FM frequencies and how you would do a play with a drive-in, like in a parking lot, so that the audio of the play is going straight into your radio. But again, it just proves the point of wow, like we've never done any of this before. And everybody on staff is like, you know, embracing new ideas, new technology, wild and crazy ways to serve you. Some of them will work and some of them won't.
I was just going to say, and some of them were saying, nope, we're not going to do that.
It's the creative spirit. We're going to try it all. Maybe not all, but we'll talk about it all.
Nope, we're going to find a different way to do that.
Yes, exactly. I like the comment in the chat that says, Ron, can you come to my house and clean up? Well, thank you, everyone. This has been another great Friday. We will hear Ron's shaking his head no. Next week, we will have a music show with Gloria Garcia Stanley and her husband, Stan Prentice. She is a singer. He is a pianist. Gloria played our Abuela Claudia in The Heights. She's just got a wonderful voice. And they're doing a parlor music concert in the tradition of the old turn of the last century parlor music. And so they'll be performing traditional American and Mexican music. And Gloria says you're welcome to sing along at home. So that's next Friday at 8. It will be on Zoom and also streamed onto Facebook. So we'd love to see you back. Thank you again. Thank you, everyone. Lisa, any last words?
No, thank you. I mean, we wouldn't still be doing this if it weren't for all of you still doing this. So just, you know, keep the stuff that we always say, just, you know, just keep your faith in us. We're all working for you, and we're determined, and we keep each other's spirits up. And if we can help keep your spirit up as well, then that will make us really happy.